Today we are learning basketball with Josh Cohen. You can find him on Twitter at Josh_Cohen_NBA. He is a writer and digital content manager for OrlandoMagic.com, and check out his YouTube page as well, covering the NBA and the Magic there. Crazy night for Magic basketball. Fresh off of Paolo Banchero game winner. Just an insane and fathomable shot when you look at the replay, but good vibes in Orlando after that one. Little up and down season, but they're finding their groove. We're gonna dive into all things Orlando Magic. But how you doing today, Josh?
I'm good, Ryan. Thanks for having me on the show. And yes, a wild game last night. I feel like there's been a number of them this season, more than the usual. Although, yeah, I feel like you'd have to go back some years to find the number of times we've had this many close games down the stretch, and pulling out many of them as well, which we haven't really seen in the last decade or so like this.
Yeah, I mean, talk about just clutch performances or clutch shots, and of this Magic team, we've already had the Desmond Bane, like an all-time Bane moment early in the season against Portland, and now we're fresh off 1 week where Banchero has two game-winning shots in the same week. Also missed the potential game winner against Portland that would have really rounded out the road trip of this clutchness. But to me, that's kind of the stretch where Paulo is back, to me, I guess, is the simplest way where to think about it. Like the first game, that potential game winner against Toronto, Banchero drops a triple double, 30-point triple double, but not just the box score. He looks explosive again. He looks like he's got his bounce back. And it looked for a while there, even after the groin injury recovery. It seemed like he wasn't quite jumping the same. He wasn't exploding the same. It seemed like maybe he was moving a little different. And he even said himself that it might take a few weeks to recover fully from that groin injury, where maybe some people are kind of looking at it a little wrongly, where in terms of the injury recovery, where a guy can be healthy enough to play, but he might not be 100% fully recovered to his former peak explosive athleticism. Like, there's a lot of factors that go into getting the body right. So my first question is about Paulo. What have you seen from him maybe in the last few weeks that are giving you some hope that maybe he's turning the tide on his own play and just individually getting back to where he was before the injuries?
Yeah, it's some good points and certainly a good question. I feel like, first and foremost, as we always talk about Paolo, he has that blend of power and finesse at 6'10", which very few guys around the league possess. And then to go along with that, he's very cerebral. His playmaking continues to get better. We were talking before the recording started about the playmaking as far as the kickouts. And, he is number one in the league when it comes to passing out to three-point shooters and those shooters knocking them down. Right now, it's at 47.3%, which ranks number one among the players who have dished out at least 50 of those kick-out passes. Number two, just for the sake of kind of understanding where things are at, like LaMelo Ball is number two, and obviously Charlotte's a really good shooting team. So I think that first and foremost has stood out the most to me for Paolo this season. Just the playmaking, the vision, the instincts, the awareness, and the ability to play within the schemes that the coaching staff wants this team to play out, especially in the half court. Now, obviously, when they're running in transition, things are a little bit different. But yeah, he makes really good decisions when those doubles come, those extra coverages, which we've seen time and time again throughout his career, probably even more so this season, especially since Franz has been out. There's so much attention put on him that it's complicated, like making the decisions on what you want to do. Like, obviously he can get downhill and draw fouls and score around the basket, especially if there's one-on-one coverage. But when a double hits, like we saw with Brooklyn yesterday, like they were trapping him, blitzing him all the way near the half court line at times. And he did a really good job. I know he had the 9 turnovers, which obviously is a lot, but he made some really crisp passes, darting them right near the basket to Wendell, Tristan, a few others. So the playmaking to me has been steady for the most part. Turnovers have been a little bit of a roller coaster, but I really feel like that's been the area of his game that has thrived the most and where he's improved the most since even last year, certainly 2 years ago. He's also finishing at the basket at a higher level than in prior years. I think some people forget about that. People are looking at the efficiency overall and seeing downside as far as mid-range shooting and three-point shooting, but near the basket, he actually is shooting a career high. Last I looked, it's around 74% within 3 feet. So that's another strong area for him. And then he's one of the leaders in getting to the free throw line, as we all know. That continues to be probably his primary strength. But yeah, the deeper shooting he made the game winner at the buzzer. Obviously, that was kind of I'm not going to say a fluke shot, but banking it in last second, tough shot, but he knocked it down. And I think that shows the confidence that he has to take those shots. Like you mentioned, 2 game winners in the last week. He has 5 now in his NBA career. So the question continues to be, can he shoot? He doesn't have to shoot the ball like Kevin Durant, or anything close to that. But can he raise the efficiency just enough from deeper out when they're playing him really tight and there is more one-on-one coverage, and maybe there's a really strong defender on him where getting all the way to the basket isn't necessarily an option in those situations? That remains to be seen, but we're starting to see that pick up a little bit. The efficiency is starting to improve from deeper out. So I just think he's playing smart basketball. I think he's playing team basketball. I think that from where he was when he first came back from the injury, like you described, he does seem to have more spring in his legs. He does have a little bit more explosion, and that power sometimes really stands out, finishing on those drives and getting all the way to the basket. And then he's really good in transition. He's not obviously known for his transition play, but because the Magic are making a more concerted attempt to play faster after getting stops, he's been very efficient in transition. He doesn't take a ton of shots in transition compared to like a Franz or an AB, but he's been efficient on those shots as well.
Yeah, so many good points here. The playmaking is really something that stands out. I threw Paulo's let's say highlights, basically every play where he had something of an impact on either side, based on the NBA box score and Crowd Scout site. So I have that playing here, and it'll show a little bit later some of the passing you saw or you mentioned, to hit on. The pass to Wendell gets doubled at half court right in overtime, right before hitting the game winner. Kind of a funny sequence of events. Like the Nets are selling out on Paolo all the way at half court as if he's gonna pull up for a half court jump shot, and somebody falls over during that scramble defense, and then he just whips it to Wendell. I'll pull it up here as we're talking. But he just whips it to Wendell under the basket, wide open. And it's just one example of kind of what you're saying with the playmaking, the decision making. And it almost feels like at times, like, trying to word this the right way, it's almost like he has too many options. In maybe that he is kind of so generally skilled at so many things that it almost becomes too many options, too many choices, and maybe it takes 1 second to actually choose what's going to happen. You can see here, there's the Wendell play with the assist where, like you said, they're doubling him in a horn set all the way at the logo. There's 4 defenders on him almost at half court. One of them falls over, 2 of them stick on him, and he just has to kind of read the defense. There's an open shooter and an open dunk, down by 1, take the open dunk, and he finds him. But, on that point about playmaking, you mentioned the stats that he's done as a three-point hub already this year. I really think his playmaking and then the rim finishing are 2 things that you mentioned that really kind of stand out in how he's adjusted this year. Like, there's a lot of conversation about the play style, like playing faster, fitting into the system where the offense with Franz when Paolo was down looks beautiful ball movement. It's on a string, it's moving, and maybe it slows down a little more with Paolo out there. But people don't necessarily correlate that, Paolo slowing the ball down, in theory, can create just as good and just of an efficient look in any play type as all that ball movement. Like, you can move the ball all you want. If Paolo's drawing too, he's creating the same advantage from all that ball movement essentially anyway. And that's just one example. But in terms of his actual game, I think we saw it before the injury. He was translating his role to be more of a playmaking hub within this offense. And I think that's really like the recipe for success. Obviously, you want to see his mid-range efficiency go up when he's taking these tough shots. He's one of the best shot creators in the game. He's the only one on the team that can create those off-the-dribble shots really that consistently at the moment. So that's a skill in of itself, especially, say, in a close game in overtime where you need a bucket and you just need a tough shot to go in and you can't necessarily create an open one. Maybe a good play can also help in times like that, but it's good to just rely on or be able to rely on a scorer as capable as Paolo. And, the clutch shooting, those are very small samples. All it takes is a few shots to go off, and then the percentages will drop. But I think just seeing him do it over and over again is one of those things where everyone in the arena is buying the idea that Paolo should get the ball for the last shot on a tough shot. And maybe there's a handful of others like, yeah, you can use a distraction. We've seen Bane hit a quick trigger shot, obviously, too. But like there, him having a lower jump shot efficiency this year is not changing how the defenses guard him on those plays, and it's not changing how the huddle and his teammates and his coaches believe in him on those plays. Like they believe he's the clutch shot maker, and it's because he makes clutch shots. So over time, you hope to see the clutch percentage go up a little bit so that that narrative can also kind of fall to the wayside, because it seems like a lot of the criticisms of Paulo's game are things that obviously he can develop and work on and get reps up to improve his efficiency. But there's just so many moving parts. I feel like maybe there's a little bit lost context in the way that Paolo gets talked about and ridiculed and criticized. I was wondering if you've noticed some of that too, and if there's anything else to maybe point out to provide some of that context.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is that he's remained confident. I think his mental space is really strong, and I think he's just kind of riding the waves right now. And the fact that he's physically starting to feel better, clearly, just visually, he's much more, like I said before, he's got more spring in his legs. I feel like that's enhancing his game, regardless of, whatever criticisms might be out there in the social media space that we live in today. But I think he's played through that really well. And even when he wasn't shooting it well, like we just talked about before, he was doing so many other things at a high level that those things should not have been ignored or dismissed. And
Right.
I think that's a little bit unfair, like you alluded to.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Where it's not like he is a 6-man mid-range scorer that comes off the bench and his impact entirely relies on if his jump shot is going that night. Like that's like the last bonus of his game, if anything. Like it might be a special skill he has, but like you're hitting on, he's a high volume free throw drawer. He creates efficient shots for himself or for the team as a playmaker consistently. He's a help side shot blocker on defense who holds his own in the post. Like he's bringing two-way impact, doing all of the skills that you want from him. And the scoring obviously is one of the top options. You want that to come too. But we just gotta kind of keep hitting that nail on the head that like he's not only here to be a mid-range jump shooter. That's like 4 possessions out of the 50 he runs per game. And I don't know if it's, I think what it really boils down to is expectations, that a lot of people see a number 1 pick and franchise player and potential all-star, potential super, definite all-star, potential superstar. And they just kind of put him on a scale with all the other superstars. And if your efficiencies are a little low, if your numbers aren't quite right compared to those guys, if your impact numbers aren't jumping off the page on the websites like the impact stats, the critics and the analytics will come at you and kind of point out your flaws on a national scale. And I think that's just louder for all those reasons, because of who he is, because of his talent, because of those expectations, where you'll see plenty of other players that take just as many mid-range jump shots as him that are not as efficient as him or roughly as efficient, but they don't get anywhere near this level of constant criticism. And, we can pick and choose. It could be people, picking spots, just trying to, hate, because that's the way the internet runs these days. But the guy just shows up. Like he hears all this noise. He takes all the noise. He knows he's playing hurt for maybe a few weeks and just trying to get the most out of his skill set until he feels like himself. Like you said, you can kind of see him look a little frustrated out there with himself because he's not getting as high as he might normally for a dunk, or he might not be able to create that same separation off the dribble. But what isn't affected by his legs is his mind, is that playmaking feel, that decision making. And that's where the playmaking shines, along with all the little stuff of he has accepted more of a short roll playmaking role, like running more pick and rolls as the roller, being a handoff hub, getting to the elbow, breaking and playmaking from there. 26 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists to 4 turnovers, and 1.5 steals and blocks over these last 6 games. Where he's really turned a corner, scoring 57% on twos, 15 twos a game, 41% on 4 threes a game, drawing 7 free throws at 70%, just bringing all around offensive engine impact where I think there's so many moving parts that, at the end of the day, the national perspective can probably take a little breather and be a little patient, I would think, when it comes to just kind of letting Paulo and this Magic team find their groove together. Because at the end of the day, does it still come back to injuries for you as kind of the story of this season before we get into all the nitty gritty of other things that are or are not working?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the most glaring thing about this team is that Paolo Franz and Jalen Suggs have only played in 17 games together the last 2 years. I believe
Yeah,
it's now 14% of the games total. I think there's been 119 games this whole time, and they've only played together in 17 of them. So it's
man.
impossible to really gauge what it's all going to look like, assuming they do all get healthy at the same time. And then you add on the emergence of Anthony Black. You have two rookies that are contributing at a high level right now. And then who knows how the season evolves and what happens with other teams as well. That's always a factor. I think I mentioned this either in a different podcast or in an article or something. Like almost every single time, the teams that go far in the playoffs are the healthiest teams or the teams that win the most games in the regular season. And so, I think about Cleveland last year winning 64 games, and that was, an amazing season. They did fall short of their goal in the playoffs, but the reason that they were able to even get to that point to begin with was they were probably the healthiest team in the entire league last year for the most part. So that hasn't been the case for Cleveland this year. So you've seen a little bit of a, not to say that they're regressing, but they haven't been as strong as they were last year to this point. But yeah, health is always a factor, and I think you can't ignore that narrative.
Right. I mean, it looked like Franz was on pace for maybe his first All Star and maybe even All NBA for a very consistent month of play, just like he had last December before
Mhm.
both of these injuries kind of wiped out his eligibility more than anything for his awards. And same with Suggs. Just every time he gets out there and looks good, something else comes up with his play. But it's hard to contain Suggs with the way he plays, and it kind of invites some of this stuff, I think. But I also don't think that like his play style is what I should say. His play style is something that all coaches want to have. That like if you're gonna make mistakes or make fouls, like do it by playing too hard and going all out for these type of plays. So that's something any team would love to have. But obviously he's got to stay on the court so we can actually see all these players and see how they gel together. And every team deals with injuries, but it really does feel like this team just needs like a healthy month or two to kind of define their real identity as a unit and then kind of start building out from there. Because, one thing that stands out for this squad is the depth. I mean, just you mentioned some of the names. Let's throw out some of the rookie names here. Jase Richardson, Noah Penda just balling out the other night, almost willing a full comeback against Washington themselves alongside some bench units for Orlando where they were down like 26 late in the third. They throw Jase and Penda and I think Isaac and some of the bench guys in there, and the team almost wills a comeback all the way to about 2 points late in the fourth. 20 points, career high for Jase Richardson. Noah Penda had 4 steals and a block, super active. What have you liked from the rookies so far? And how soon do you think maybe they could crack the regular rotation, and how much of that has to do with their play versus maybe the availability and the depth of the rest of the team?
I think the most fascinating part right now, and I know it's a relatively small sample size for both, but just based on efficiency levels, they're the two best 3-point shooters right now on the Magic, which is hard to believe. I mean, very rarely will you see two rookies on a team that has guys that have been in the league for a number of years now be, at least from an efficiency standpoint, the best 3-point shooters. I mean, Noah Penda was obviously not advertised to be a perimeter shooter, but right now he's shooting 45.5% from downtown, which is third best among qualified rookies, and it is the best on the Magic, and Jase is right behind him. So it is small quantity when you really break it down, but especially for Noah, considering that was not projected to be one of his strengths, I feel like that has really popped. Defensively, as you kind of alluded to, I mean, the way he hounds ball handlers, he's swarming, he gets his entire body in the play, and he's strong, he's smart, he moves his feet well, he crashes the glass. He just made so many heads up plays so far that have translated into impact plays or have led to other guys making big plays. And so I think that his all around game is just very impressive. I also he had a couple plays a few games ago. He had that great pivot footwork and he was able to score off in the post. And obviously, these are things that I don't think anyone projected of him, at least this early in his career. He was primarily thought of as maybe a not necessarily like a primary playmaker, but maybe like a secondary or tertiary playmaker, kind of just playing off other guys. I think I know the Boris Diaw comparison was thrown out there, and he was obviously really good at those sort of things. And then I think we definitely assumed he'd bring the hustle and the intensity, the size, and from day one that has been true. He has delivered on those things. So from Noah's standpoint, being a 32nd overall pick, I think clearly the Magic have gotten all that they could have asked for to this point from him. And so we'll see how his career develops from here. But again, the shooting has really popped. I mean, certainly did not expect him to be shooting 45.5% from three with whatever it is, 40 something attempts, whatever it is right now. And then Jase, right? So another guy who has great touch, and his touch obviously extends out to the 3-point line. He's crafty getting to the basket. He's willing to draw fouls, which at 6'1" is somewhat of a rarity. He plays with intensity. The questions to me there are, can he improve his footwork? Can he become more polished with his footwork, which we see from today's great scoring guards that they all have that, whether it's Brunson or Shea. And I'm not saying he's going to be those guys, but for him to elevate his game offensively, I think that he's got to figure out like how to manipulate the defense, how to take advantage of his craftiness, and how to be more creative with the ball. Because he's pretty good going in a straight line. He's pretty fast off the dribble. He blows by his defenders at a pretty high percentage. And then he finishes at a pretty efficient level near the basket. And then, like I said before, he's willing to draw fouls and take contact. His spot-up shooting has been really good. Right now, he's shooting 46% on catch-and-shoot stationary threes and 42% on the relocation and on the move threes. So we haven't seen these kind of numbers from Magic players in recent years because they have been a poor three-point shooting team. So those things have really stood out. Again, I don't think you can ever expect a guy 6'1" to be a primary stopper on defense. I don't think Jase is ever going to be, an all defensive guy. Obviously, he's not going to be a Jalen Suggs or an AB, but can he just apply just enough ball pressure up the floor to be a pest? I think that's all you could really ask for him at his height. And we've seen a few plays. There was the play in Denver where he stripped the ball away and then went in for a dunk. That was an impressive defensive play. He's had a few, I think he's totaled, so I looked this up, so he's totaled 12 deflections and 8 steals. So his instincts seem to be pretty good off the ball. Like he's coming up with deflections, he's tapping the ball away, he's stripping the ball away, or he's intercepting passes. So, again, for not being known for his defensive abilities, those sort of things stand out. Like anytime he does something good defensively, it's like, oh, okay, it's not a liability. And yeah, as he gets more touches, as he becomes more comfortable as a primary shot creator, if it ever becomes that, I'm very curious to see if he can just develop an all-around offensive skill set. And I think the footwork, to me, is at the forefront of that because I think he has the touch and he has the willingness to attack. So that's my perspective of him at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you highlighted all that, especially, Jase and Penda there, but Jase's speed, stands out, that first step burst, like you mentioned, and the touch. I mean, the touch has been like the first time I saw him play back against in Columbus, like he was on the floor with the Boozers and his brother Jackson and all that. The touch is what stood out. Like he was just like floating into these mid-range jumpers and just a clean looking jumper all like from day one. And you just continue to see that with the shooting. He might be the most versatile shooter. Obviously Bane is here now, but like these two are like the most versatile shooters Orlando has had, I don't know, ever ? Like it's something partly due to how scorers and shooters kind of have become more versatile in general, but with obviously Orlando had a ton of shooting back with Dwight, but not off the dribble like this, not off motion shooting as much, a little JJ, but not to get dragged down in comparisons, but Jase has been electric, like you said, and what stands out, like you're saying, is that two-way feel, like the instincts to kind of play team first basketball on both ends of the floor. and that leads to active hands and anticipation for the steals and the deflections on that end, where like you don't want him to be on an island per se, one on one with anyone, but as a part of a rotation, you could do worse say if he's your weakest link in the rotation. Like you could definitely find a lot worse guards on that end who do kind of become negatives, and being a part of a unit like that could be helpful, and maybe the speed, the anticipation, maybe that is kind of his outlier way to provide defensive impact, is being the guy that leaks out to force turnovers and jump passing lanes while the rest of the defense is a little more on the ball and maniacal in their hand waving and all that. And Penda, I'm glad you highlighted as well, because interesting enough, I had talked to someone on the podcast, Roshan Putluri, a scout who does some scouting work with the Capitanes at the time, and now with Priority Sports. But he actually mentioned about 6 months before the Magic drafted these players, he highlighted closeout attacking prospects, and Jase Richardson and Noah Penda were two of the main names that he brought up, and for two different reasons. They both kind of do a lot of ancillary things well for role players, where Jase can beat you with his speed, but Penda can beat you with his strength, and those two provide kind of different looks in the way you're attacking closeouts, where especially in Orlando now, where if those two are kind of, you can envision those two guys playing off the ball, off of all of Orlando's star creators, and bringing something a little different each as they're attacking closeouts. Someone actually compared the way Penda's been playing as like a bigger Jalen Suggs, the way he's moving around, and I didn't hate it, just from like the defense, the energy, the, like you said, the connective playmaking. The 3-point shot has been huge. You know, he definitely, the thing that stood out to me on tape for him was just his energy, his off-ball movement, just how hard he plays every possession, rebounding, passing, just moving the ball and staying within the system. Like you can envision how he slides right in to this team long term as well. So I think the Magic clearly, you know, hit the head on these two picks yet again. Like the draft has been huge for Orlando, just nailing pick after pick, it seems like. And you know, maybe everything's not perfect with every selection, but I think it's a pretty high rate for this Magic front office the past few years now, where, you know, Franz, Suggs, Paolo, Penda, Jase, I'm probably forgetting Anthony Black, and then, you know, Jet in the same draft. Like, you know, that's just, and Isaac all the way back to their first choice. Like, that's just a lot of hits on talent, I think. So kudos to Weltman and Anthony Parker in the front office for, you know, putting together this unit. You know, in terms of, let's say, the play on the court, I wanted to ask about Coach Mosley and your thoughts on just his general coaching this year. You know, whether it's substitution patterns, whether it's lineups. I would say he's also dealt a pretty rough hand when it comes to availability, as we've already hit on, trying to juggle who's available to play and form those lineups. And he emphasizes guys just kind of staying ready for the moment and being ready when their number's called, how everyone needs to kind of be ready at all times for that. I was just wondering, what do you make of his coaching style this year? And have you noticed anything? Let's talk about, say, the elephant in the room when it comes to like the Magic's defense or giving up leads late in third quarter. What do you make about Coach Mosley's coaching in general, his tactics in general, the way he goes about it, and, you know, this team buying in to that messaging? And really, I think what I'm getting at is the substitution patterns of it all. Like, what do you make of not necessarily having a clear rotation every night, and, you know, guys just kind of having to stay ready for when their number is called?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, he is a great communicator. So he articulates things very well to players, to other staff. I mean, I've had plenty of conversations with him through the years, and I've always been so impressed with how he communicates. It's clear, it's to the point, and it's honest. You know, I think he's willing to tell players, or whoever else for that matter, how he sees it, and then he likes to get other people's opinions. So I always think that's a really appreciative thing. You know, you always want to hear people show confidence in other people, right? Like, I think he does that at a really high level, and I think the players respond really well to it. And you could see, like Noah Penda was talking after the game in Brooklyn, like the confidence that the coaches have in him has made him more comfortable. right? And the same with his teammates. Like he feels more comfortable because the trust is there. And I think Coach Mosley has done that from the very beginning. I've always gotten the sense that players feel confident when they're around him because he kind of oozes that confidence toward them. It's like he makes them feel like they can do something that maybe they're having doubts about. And we've seen players step up their game, I think, because of that. Like AB is a great example. I mean, he's told AB, I know a million times, like be aggressive, don't hesitate. Like we know you have it in you. And AB's teammates have done the same with him, and that's why we're seeing an emergence in his play. But yeah, I mean, even like you talked about, like in timeouts and stuff, he has great poise, and I think as this team has evolved and they've gotten older and they've matured, we've seen this is one of the reasons why I think they've had a few game-winning shots this year. Is these timeouts are they're not chaotic, they're not turbulent. He keeps a calm within the team, even when maybe they've surrendered a double-digit lead, like they did in Brooklyn, like it did in Utah, right, or Portland. I feel like demeanor is so critical. I've learned that through the years, and I think the coach is kind of at the top of the chain when it comes to making sure that chaos doesn't ensue. Um, Obviously, I haven't been around that many coaches through the years, but I have seen coaches in the past like they just lose control. And Coach Mose is the total opposite, right? He stays composed, and the players respond to that well. I think it just as a human, like no matter what we're doing in life, you want to feel like you're around people that stay calm, that don't create a disturbance, regardless of the surroundings. And to me, that's been one of his biggest strengths since becoming the head coach of the Magic. And as far as like rotation patterns and things like that, like with the injuries, obviously you have to keep exploring different options. And I feel like he's done a really good job of that. I mean, a lot of coaches, I mean, like we talked about Noah and Jase, I mean, they wouldn't be playing right now with a lot of other coaches. I mean, that's just the reality. We've seen that even in the Magic House in the past. Now, who knows if there were no injuries going on, how much would we really see of Noah, even Jase? Like, it's hard to say, but this is what creates opportunity for other guys, and they've stepped in, like we talked about before, and contributed. I just think, again, it comes down to trust. Like everybody who's in this locker room, I think believes that they can contribute when they step on the floor. And the only way they're going to feel that is if they're being inserted into the game, right? Like, because if you're being left out, you just assume like the coaches don't believe in you. And it's just that simple, right? Um, so I think from that perspective, he's gotten the most out of the talent that is in house, and that's one of the main reasons why these guys are improving the way that they are overall. I mean, it's been a roller coaster, as we all know, but I think that's been a big factor.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough nice things, positive things about what Coach Mosley has done for the Magic standard, as he likes to call it, and the way this team shows up for him. Anytime you ask a player, it's about his style. Like it's just it's positive, and it's positive. Like he brings positivity. They talk about his smile, the communication you talk about, just the really preaching that positivity and confidence into these guys on a day-to-day basis where he comes from player development. He's obviously a former player himself. I think one of the reasons his message doesn't get old is because he seems to emphasize that daily player development, like just getting better day to day. Try not to get too lost in the long-term goals and the hype and the expectations, and just show up and get better at your game. And I think that really translates well for him. We got to talk a little bit about Anthony Black here to end the pod. The team as a whole is also fourth on offense at not turning the ball over, which I think is one of the bigger improvements for this team. Would you correlate that to, we do have Tyus Jones now in the mix, the assist to turnover king, and Anthony Black obviously making a huge leap. Do you correlate the Orlando rating fourth in offensive turnover percentage to some of those guys, or is there anything else? Maybe it's more of Prunty and his new system?
I think coaches always have an impact on the turnover number. I remember when we had Steve Clifford, that was like his number one thing. He ranked in the top five, those years at times, and that was one of the main reasons why they made that big surge in the 2018-19 year to make the playoffs. I mean, they kept their turnovers so low with DJ Augustine and Markel Fultz, and that grouping that they had at that time. But I feel like the Tyus Jones component is I know Tyus hasn't shot the ball well this year, but that turnover number every year just is astounding. It really is. I mean, he is such a high IQ cerebral player, and I don't think he gets enough credit for it, even though that stat has been emphasized so many times throughout his career, or at least the last few years. Like, it should never be ignored, and he is a big factor why the Magic rank fourth in limiting turnovers and have been number one since November 15th. Now, the last couple games, obviously the number has increased a little bit, which cost them, I think, in the Washington game and almost cost them in the Brooklyn game. But and as far as AB, I mean, I do think like passing was actually probably his biggest weakness earlier in the year. And I think lately it's been one of his more, I'm not going to say it's a strength right now, but it's certainly improved. So I think, again, he's figuring the game out, AB. Even these last couple games when he wasn't scoring a ton and it wasn't shooting it well, you still feel like he's putting his fingerprints on the game, just reading the game, like understanding what's going on. And what's amazing, I mean, this is how far he's come. I mean, yesterday, and I know Brooklyn's big on blitzing and trapping and throwing doubles, like we talked about earlier with Paolo. Like, even he was getting doubled. I mean, that just goes to show you how things have changed, because that certainly wouldn't have happened earlier this year and certainly not in the last 2 years. So the attention on him is growing. The question now is, can he make the adjustments when there's going to be more pressure on him? That remains to be seen, because when he's playing loose and free, he's great. He's electric in transition. He arguably, you could argue he's maybe the best transition guard right now in the league, just based on movement and the finishing with authority. I mean, I think he's second among guards in dunks. He is willing to be explosive going toward the rim when he's on the move. Now, when he's in the half court, it's a little bit up and down. Like, sometimes he shows that like craftiness to swerve away from interior defenders. Other times he gets caught and it gets swiped away or blocked. But his touch has improved overall. The other big thing, and when he was having his big scoring nights, his pull-up jumper was falling. The pull-up jumper has been his most glaring weakness, really, since he came into the league. If he could even that out, if he could at least, like with Paolo, really, if he could just become like a mid-range pull-up jump shooter or a pull-up three-point shooter, like, it's going to take his game to a whole nother level. The pull-up jump shot is really where that kind of defines the kind of game he has offensively. And I thought, I know Michael Porter in the first half was going crazy, but like, AB's defense yesterday, I thought, was fantastic. He was so swarming. We've seen that before, but you could tell, like, based on what happened in the Washington game, he was motivated to prove, like, I'm going to give the effort this time, and he really did. I still think, like, from a technical and physicality standpoint, like, when you're 6 foot, and I know there's a little debate about whether he's 6'7", 6'8", like, whatever it is. I mean, he's probably more like 6'8", but who knows? Maybe I'm misjudging.
He called himself that. He said, I'm 6'7" or 6'8". Like, like, you don't know.
But when you have that kind of physical stature, you're already obviously in a driver's seat to be an effective defender just based on that alone. But like, when he's engaged, I'm not sure there's another defender at his position that's better. I mean, maybe Amen Thompson. I don't know. It's close, but he might be, right there as the best defensive guard in the league when he is fully immersed in it. And yesterday, I thought he really was.
Yeah, absolutely. I got some defensive stats for you. Todd Whitehead just shared this a few days ago. Anthony Black defends the toughest assignment for his team 25% of the time, the third most of any NBA defender. So Orlando is using Anthony Black as who was their sixth man to start the year. He is spot starting at any position they need other than center, basically, where he'll fill in for Suggs one day, fill in for Franz another. He's guarding the other team's best player a quarter of the time, the third most of any defender. And he's doing all of these offensive leaps, as we've talked about, as a driver, as a three-point shooter, creator, scorer. You just hit on a ton of reasons why. Some more defensive stats. He's tied for 26 with Shea and 4 others at 3 deflections a game. Tied for 36 with Amen Thompson and others at 1.3 steals per game. Tied for 79th with Kawhi at 0.7 blocks per game. So very, very active deflector type of defense. Obviously has instincts when it comes to reaching and digging for steals without fouling, like one of his specialties, and just so versatile as a defender. So the idea he's doing all of that on defense. He's made these leaps and bounds offensively. He just had a 10-game stretch where he scored 23 points a game, 5 assists to 2.5 turnovers, 4 rebounds, 1.4 steals, and zero point 0.8 blocks, shooting 43% from 3 on 6 threes, 54% from 2 on 10 twos, 78% from free throw on 5 free throws. He's just doing it all. And my last question on him is, do you think there's one role where he has excelled the most? Because there's times, like you said, where he kind of can get trapped in the half court on the ball, where he's left to be the primary creator, but he's been very effective in handoffs and pick and rolls, especially with Wendell, and obviously thrives in the full court, calls himself a wide receiver, playing off of Suggs, throwing the full touchdown passes, or Banchero, both former quarterbacks there. Transition killer with his speed and at that athleticism, the incredible footwork that he shows. Is there one role that you think he's been best at, whether it's creating as the main point guard or, say, attacking closeouts off the ball with the starters next to a Paolo and a Bain? Is there one that seems better than the other so far, or is that versatility kind of what makes him special?
Versatility definitely makes him special. I would say when they get Franz back, we're going to see them pick up the pace again. The one glaring thing that has happened in the absence of Franz is that they're not playing nearly as fast as they were pre-Franz injury. The transition numbers are clear as day. 22nd in transition shot attempts after the Franz injury, 5th before. The shooting percentages in transition are lower since the Franz injury. When Franz returns, that will once again unlock what AB does best, in my opinion, and that is run the floor and play full steam ahead and be aggressive, getting to the basket, going downhill when they're in complete mobility. There's no doubt, and I know in the playoffs it'll be different. The game slows down, and that's where Paolo really will come into play as far as being that half-court offensive force. But to me, in the regular season anyway, for the Magic to reach their full potential, to me, and I think it showed in the early portion of the season, they have to keep running after they get stops or forced turnovers. To me, it's their best source of producing efficient offense. Nobody's ever expecting this team to be a great three-point shooting team or even just a great half-court offensive team in general. But we saw it in late November in the games against the Clippers and the Warriors, the Sixers. Remember that game in Philly when AB had 31 points? When they are out full force running after getting stops and playing that swarming defense, they arguably are one of the best teams in the league. It shows obviously in the stats. I think the return of Franz will once again unlock what AB does best, which is get out and run. I still think that's his main strength. The other thing, the 3-point shooting has been less lately, but I did notice going back to the Paolo kickout passing, AB right now is shooting 47% from 3 off the Paolo kickouts. Bain is shooting 58% on those, which you might think, oh, it's Desmond Bain. He's a great shooter. But Desmond for the season is only shooting about 34-35% from 3 in general. So these Paolo kickouts are obviously factoring in and making these guys better shooters. But so that's another thing I would add. But the transition play, that's in today's era, AB can thrive because the game is faster. If AB was playing 10 years ago, it would be harder for him probably to have as much success as he's having. I think the speed of the game helps him dramatically. That's my view anyway. And I think he's the perfect player at his position for the era that we're in and the style of play that we're in.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, his versatility and athleticism just pops off the page, and I think that those two things combined with his feel for the game, those instincts, just make him a really incredible all around player. And like you said, when that shot is going, man, is he hard to stop? The pull up jump shooter. Shout out to assistant coach God Shamgod as well. Supposedly has done a ton of work, which not supposedly, Black has credited him directly for a lot of that work as well. Just combining, I think, all of his skills into the full package of believing in the handles, the crossover dribbles. That's something that stood out to me, is him on the ball, being more confident, knowing that he can pull off all of these handles, and if he starts to combine them into dribble combinations with his quick first step burst, he's just exploding to the rim for drive after drive, and more finishes and more dunks as we hit on this year. Like, I think he's a shoe-in at least to get recognized in some way, and definitely needs to be in the conversation for some of these awards for sixth man or most improved. Just recognize him some way, somehow, because of this improved play this year. Just a nuclear rise for Anthony Black. But excited to see where the team goes from here. And man, exciting times. Most of these feel like good problems to have. You've hit on Paolo's playmaking and just how big that can be for this team, where if teams are sending two to Paolo in the middle of the floor and he's surrounded by 5-out shooters and guys that can attack closeouts, like that's a recipe for success for this team, and will play out over time. So appreciate you hopping on the pod to share your perspective, Josh. Really, really appreciate all you do covering the Magic. If anyone isn't aware already, be sure to follow Josh on Twitter, on YouTube. Read his writing with the Magic site, and for some great killer analysis, not just on the Magic, but on the NBA at large. But thanks a lot for taking the time today, Josh.
Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Have a good one. Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from beyond the arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.